Thank you.
Maybe let's just talk about some of the opportunities investing in the region is offering right now. And of course, your firm does advisory work for many companies looking to take advantage of some of the deal making going on. Just give us a sense for what activity is like right now.
Pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for having me, Joumanna. I have to say, in my 18 years of being in the region, I've never seen this region be so energetic as I'm seeing it over the past few years. And a lot of it is underpinned by government strategy and focus on the domestic agenda far more than they used to have when they were typically investing a lot of the excess capacity that came out of the oil production in international markets. Now there's a bit of a shift that has happened, particularly in Saudi, certainly in the UAE for the past number of years, where the focus is on what do we do domestically for us to encourage and diversify our economy. They have a huge growing population, very young population. Yeah. And clearly they're looking at the fact that the world beyond oil, where do they want to be? And they want to be in a much more diversified economy than they used to be. Yeah. So the sovereign wealth funds have gone into now investing more directly into assets internationally that can bring know-how back into the region. They've also encouraged their portfolio companies, the GREs, in doing a lot more direct investing. So we're seeing, if you want, more corporate-like investing happening, but that's underpinned predominantly by the sovereigns looking towards that consolidation agenda or that investment agenda, and really with the focus on their economies being far more diversified than they used to be. And it's actually really quite nice to see that happen, because ultimately the level of sophistication of these investments or this M&A activity has actually increased quite meaningfully. Yeah. We're seeing really interesting transactions, cross-border transactions, domestic consolidation transactions. So from our perspective, this is great. We're seeing a lot of activity as a result.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask about the pipeline. One of the conversations I had last week at Dubai FinTech Summit was with Adina Friedman, the CEO of NASDAQ, and she was saying how healthy the listing environment has been in Dubai. And I just wonder whether that momentum can continue, whether you see that continuing in 2024, 2025.
Oh, absolutely. Again, because it is underpinned by governments wanting to support it. So if you see the large IPOs that have happened, they've been government-owned entities that have been listed. So that has encouraged the private sector. So the recent example of Spinny's listing is a private sector listing that is now thinking, okay, there is liquidity in this market. I should be encouraged to list my company. But it had the government-owned entities, which are meaningful and sizable and attract international investors coming in. Had those not happened, I think people would have been far less discouraged. But if you look today at the pipeline, there's at least 80 to 100 companies that are in the pipeline that are looking to be listed, whether that's on the Tadawul or the ADF or DFM. We're seeing a lot of activity, and I think we'll continue to see that for a while to come.
How do you see the opportunity for a boutique advisory firm like yourself? Because you tend to hear about these mega listings and the mega banks getting involved.
Sure.
The handful of U.S. investment banks or European investment banks advising those companies. How does it create opportunities for you?
There'll always be an opportunity for boutiques like us. We're looked at as independent, best in class, having a lot of experience and ability for us to give real good advice for these owners of companies, owners of organizations. And we're working on multi-billion-dollar transactions, sometimes alongside with the large banks, sometimes on our own. But there's always going to be a need for people to want to get advice for them, and without any view of any conflict of that advice. And so we're quite busy at this stage, and I think we expect to be quite busy for a while to come, given what's happening in the region.
How do you see the evolution of financial centers in the region? Because we talk about the opportunities in Saudi. I spoke about Dubai. Obviously, Abu Dhabi is attracting a lot of capital.
Sure.
We're here right now in Doha.
Sure.
Do you sense that there's a bit of competition going on between all of these cities?
There's always going to be what they call healthy competition amongst them. And I think we tend to see part of that competition that we're saying, well, wouldn't it be better for everybody to collaborate? And the view has always been, well, we're stronger by competing, because it encourages us and it forces us to be better and to be different and to do more things that are opening the market and encouraging more people to come in. And so it's looked at as healthy companies, sort of like siblings that actually were sort of trying to do their own thing. But we haven't seen too much negativity that comes out of that. Collaboration is always good. I think from a sovereign level, they all collaborate a lot with one another. But certainly there is in their own capital markets, each one of them is trying to attract more people to list in there.
What do you think needs to happen? I mean, clearly, many of these governments are doing the right things. And yesterday I was on a panel with His Excellency Jad'an, Saudi Finance Minister, and we spoke about FDI. And he said, our message to international investors is we want to create a good business climate so that international money comes in.
Sure.
what needs to be done, or what more needs to be done? Because they're doing some of the right things,
yes.
but what other elements do we need to see?
I think you need to take a bit of a step back in terms of where Saudi is coming from. Saudi was not a very open environment for the longest time, and now they're very open, and they would like to encourage more FDIs coming in. But regulation needs to follow that, openness needs to follow us, clarity of rules and how one should navigate in that, bankruptcy laws, proceedings, etc. Examples of that need to happen. I think the lack of meaningful FDIs that the Saudi government was hoping for is only a matter of time. I don't think it's something that's going to be there forever, that they're not going to get as much FDIs as they would like. I think they are starting to open up much more to that.
Yeah.
But again, there's an issue of perception, there's an issue of practicality, there's an issue of actually rules and regulations being modified. They already changed 3,000 laws, apparently, that have helped to get to that level. But they're saying that there's another 2/3 laws that they need to change.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that's happening, and it's quite a tough environment for them to just do things overnight. People expect them to do things overnight, and I think it's going to take a little bit longer than that, but they're certainly heading in the right direction and doing a lot of the right
Well,
things.
it does sound quite positive. You paint a positive picture for financial activity this year.